Jordan, you talked before about investor-ready financials. So this question is focusing on single event personal injury law firms in the United States. What advice do you have for firms with 10 million plus in EBITDA, firms between 3 million and 10 million in EBITDA, and firms with 3 million or less in gross revenues who don't track EBITDA yet, right? In the context of today's conversation, right, about private equity coming into sales of personal injury law firms, looking at those three categories from an investor-ready financial standpoint, just curious to know your thoughts.
Yeah, so with the law firms that are in kind of that larger category, the 10 million plus, um, my general advice is to really focus on that operational excellence pillar. And what I mean by that is to really, it's very likely that you've been running the firm and running the business, and kind of whatever you net is gravy for you. But now, if you are preparing for an exit, now it's about really making sure that you can squeeze the margin that you possibly have within the business, squeeze that out. Now, that could be through an MSO type of structure, but it could not. It could be that you actually need to centralize your intake. It could be that you need to consider moving to a much leaner pod structure. Could be that you don't have the right processes in place. Operational excellence tends to go by the wayside as you start it bigger. And it gets a little bit more challenging to put your arms around the business. That's when you need to double down on the operational excellence. Um, as it relates to folks that are kind of on the lower end of the spectrum that you listed out, Jeremy, what I would recommend is very likely you have been kind of the person wearing all of the hats. And it's really important that you take a look at succession planning, roles and responsibilities, and that key man risk. Um, that is very likely one of the sticking points. And again, assuming that you want to be in the driver's seat when it comes to your own valuation and your own deal structure, very important that you mitigate that as a risk. And the last thing that I'll say is across the board in all of those categories, it's really important that you start to demonstrate from a marketing perspective, start to demonstrate that you can get into digital. Because one of the things that I think everyone in this space knows at this point is that kind of traditional marketing, SEO, PPC, billboard, TV, all of those types of things are not only becoming extremely expensive and highly competitive, but it's extremely difficult to track that ROAS at that level of media. And so it's very important that you're at least getting into digital and starting to show that you can build your base off of digital as well.
And I just want to add to what Jordan said, which is 100% correct. And we've been partners in arms. We've stepped into law firms to help them get ready for private equity. She's worn all the hats. And we bring a lot of financial resources in with us as well. What I would say is important to everyone. If you don't know how to do this, just reach out. We can help you do it fairly quickly. If you're thinking about this, take your numbers and give them to someone you trust that understands the private equity or outside investor lens, and have them convert your numbers from cash to GAAP, right? And then in part of doing that is understand how your compensation will flow through there. Understand how much of the family business or family expenditures are running through there. Understand, what are add backs, these types of things, so that you can understand through the investor lens, how is an investor going to look at my business versus how I am optimizing it today for cash and tax purposes, right? So it's really, really important, if you're thinking about doing this, to bring in someone that can translate your financials to how an investor will view them. This also will stop you from having surprises when you go in and you allow the investor in, and you go in with one expectation around what your financial picture is, and they tell you it's something completely different. So prepare.